Welcome to Inspired Living with Keri Murphy, the podcast, where as your host each and every week, I am going to inspire you and empower you to share your message and step into that big vision you see for yourself. I'll be bringing you celebrity interviews, influencer insights, and my personal tips from decades as an on-camera talent, TV host, media expert, and entrepreneur, so you can build a brilliant seven-figure brand. Because when you're inspired, you inspire others. So let's go. So I think it was quite a few years back that I was speaking at my friend Melissa Land's event, and she introduced me to Shaa Wasmund. And I remember at that time being so impressed with just her authenticity and how she shows up so raw and just really pulled back the curtain on what was working for her. And fast forward, I am so excited to have her on the Inspired Living show today because what I know about Shaa is that she is so passionate about helping people create generational wealth. Like not just helping people create six figures, which is what we hear over and over again, but to actually keep six figures, right? Not to just build a seven-figure business, but to also create wealth for yourself and your family and the generations that come after that. And in this interview, Shaa talks about her tumultuous upbringing, moving to the UK, and really deciding, making the conscious decision that she was going to do something different, that she wasn't going to be in some sort of relationship, some sort of abuse where she couldn't ever afford to get out. And that has driven her to be one of the UK's top 20 entrepreneurs. Of course, she has built a multi-million-dollar business. But again, what I love so much about Shaa is how she shows up, how she delivers, and how committed she is to making global change. Get ready, my friend, for a very inspired living interview with Shaa Wasmund. Shaa, it is so wonderful to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining me today.
You're very welcome. I'm excited to be here.
I love how Melissa Lands brought us together. Here's what I love. I love how amazing women bring other amazing women together. And I have been a fan of you for quite some time. I love watching you on social because that word that we hear all the time, that authenticity word, I have to say, I think you do a really good job. And I just want to start off by saying, way to go, from what it seems, and I don't know you well, but I can't wait to change that. You just seem so authentic and congruent and real. We've done Clubhouse together, and I just want to say thanks because it's so refreshing.
You're welcome. And I'm about to be even more real now because my dog is whining at the door. So I'm going to just go and open the door so my dog can get in. You see, that is being real. And
this is how it goes. That is right. This is how it happens. And this is why I love so much that people can Zoom and we can do lives because real life happens all the time. And it makes people say, I can do it too.
People think that everything has to be perfect. We're all setting ourselves and everybody else up for a fall.
Absolutely. Yes. Now, Shaa, you were recently named top 20 entrepreneurs in the UK, but I know that is not where you started. Actually, you started out here in Cali with, where I am right now, made your way to the UK. For people who don't know about you and don't know your backstory, it's easy to look at you now and go, wow, what an incredible success. But you didn't start out that way. Can you give us a little bit of the behind the story of Shaa?
Yeah, totally. So I was born in the States. I was actually born at Stanford Hospital. So I was born in Palo Alto, California. I grew up there until I was about 10. And then we came back to the UK. My mum's British and my dad was American. And they had an absolutely awful divorce. My dad was abusive, violent, drug addict, even though he went to Stanford. So I think this is, people don't realize that, drugs pervade every aspect of society. It's not, it's not a social demographic thing. And as a result of that, when we came back to the UK, I'd spent many years living in a highly dysfunctional household with an extreme amount of violence. And we came back to the UK and we had nowhere to live. We had nothing. We were literally destitute. So we lived in a hostel for homeless families for nearly 2 years. And then we went from living in hostel to living in what you guys would call the projects. So yeah, I definitely do not come from money or from anything really. Everything that's happened, I've had to build myself, and I'm proud of that. But
as you should be, yeah.
But equally, I'm very passionate about helping particularly other women, make their path easier than mine was.
Yeah. It's really easy to go through something like that and to have a pity party and to blame the world and to sit as a victim. Obviously, that is not the choice that you chose. Was that something that was very conscious for you? Was it like, I am not going to do this. I'm going to go forge I'm going to say multi-pound, multi-million dollar business. Or was it something that you had to really work on?
No, it was just in my DNA. I think from 8 years old, from very young, when I first started to sadly witness, the extent of my dad's abuse, I was like, this is never happening to me in my life.
Yeah.
Nobody is ever gonna, there's so many women, they stay in abusive situations because they can't afford to get out of them.
I know.
And
Yeah.
I learned very early on that will never, ever be me. Like, it was a very conscious decision that I think that we can go through situations in life and we can either use them as a brake to hold us back or an accelerator to drive us forwards. And I made the decision this was going to be an accelerator to drive me forward.
Yeah. I'm so glad. I'm so glad you chose that path. And in the last 5 years, you've made some big adjustments in your life to be able to live the life. I mean, at Inspired Living, we talk so much about living in your genius and doing the things you love. And it all can sound so rainbows and fairy dust. And I always say to people, like, that's not real. Like, I think Inspired Living is doing something that you're really passionate about and something that you love. But what changes did you have to make to live what I would call an inspired life today for you?
So for me, I mean, I just want to go back to my decision, which was a very intentional decision to use what happened to me as an accelerator. And I just want to acknowledge that is not an easy thing to do. So for anybody listening to this who has been through that and wasn't able to use it as an accelerator, that there is no judgment. This going through trauma in your life affects people differently. So even with the best will and intention in the world, I believe that there is also something in our DNA that allows us to cope better or worse than somebody else in a situation. So for example, my brother did not cope very well at all. He used it as a brake and I used it as an accelerator, and we have the same parents. So I just want to say, because I think it's really important, because sometimes I think we have a hard enough time as it is. We do not need to beat ourselves up anymore about how we did or didn't handle situations and how that person handled it better than I did. And that whole comparison about what we should have done, what we could have done, but we didn't do. I think I just want to put that there. So for me, inspired living is not working a 4-hour week, because I have no idea what that is. Like,
me neither.
This week, I've done 12-hour days every single day of the week. That's not normal, and I don't encourage it. And I actually don't enjoy doing, time like that. That's too much for me. But when you're working on work that you love, that is meaningful to you, that is inspired living. And if you can then create a lifestyle that allows you to live in a way that you want to live and create memories with the people that matter to you, that's inspired living. So for me, prior to the pandemic, inspired living meant that I ran a business that allowed me to travel and hang out with people that I love, like Melissa, our mutual friend, and travel the world and go to great places and hang out with cool people. And that was more important to me than buying a Ferrari. I never had to question whether I could get on a plane. I could always afford to get on a plane. I could always afford to go wherever I wanted to go. And I could always afford to stay in whatever hotels I wanted to stay in. Now, I wouldn't necessarily fly first class everywhere, but I'd probably fly business most of the time. But for me, that was more important to me than the car or the diamonds or I've got 2 beautiful homes. I don't need a bigger house. I'm all good. The travel and the memories and the experiences, that's inspired living for me.
And so when the pandemic hit in 2020, that must have been really hard for you.
Yeah. And it was hard for me, particularly. It was hard for everybody, but it was hard for me. It was hard for me in a different way. For me, my MO, my modus operandi, the way I operate has always been the same. I work flat out. I wake up at 5:30. I work before my son gets up. I sort him out for school. I work. He comes back. I break. I work again in the evening. I will typically do 10-hour days, sometimes 12 if I have to. But I typically don't work on a Friday. So I cram 5 days into 4, and that's my choice. I prefer to work like that, have a 3-day weekend. But here's the thing. I used to take 17 weeks vacation. So people think, oh my God, you work a lot. I'm like, hell no, I don't. This is how I like to operate. I love what I do. So I want to be all in whilst I'm in. And then when I'm out, I want to take lengthy vacations. I want to take all of my son's school holidays off. That's what I want to do.
Yeah. Well, I
And
love
then,
that because you make a conscious choice. Like, this is how I choose. And I think that that's the beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur, Shaa, is that we get to. Like, that's something that we get to do. We can work really, really hard when we want, and we can also decide when we need to take breaks and how important those breaks are.
absolutely. And then the other challenge is that, when the pandemic hit, the way I worked just couldn't work anymore. So I didn't know what to do because I was just
Right.
like, it didn't stop. My working just didn't stop. And then I felt like I took on a lot of responsibility for my community because I knew that, I'm financially okay no matter what's happening. I'm okay. But a lot of people weren't okay. And especially at the very beginning when nobody knew what was happening or how long this was going to
Yeah.
happen. And was there any government support or not? I felt such a responsibility to, be the one working all the hours to find out all the answers. What was the government going to do? How could we support small businesses? And I didn't stop. And I'm really feeling now like it's catching up on me because I feel like I've done 14, 15 months of full on, no stop, no break work. And I've never done that in my life. I've always
Yeah.
been all in and then 17 weeks vacation. That works for me. I love that. I love being on holiday for 17 weeks. Who wouldn't want to do that? And so that was a balance for me. But then I found myself completely out of balance. And now I'm trying to address it. Now I realize that actually we have to take care of ourselves as well because otherwise we just run out of gas.
That is so true. And you know what's interesting, Shaa? You were talking about your childhood, and it's something I don't talk a lot about mine, but I grew up, my dad was lovely, but he definitely was an alcoholic, sexually abused by my grandfather. And the reason why I'm bringing that up right now is because there's a bit of like, I have to save everyone. Like, I feel that in you. Like, there's like the savior. And I think that's why we probably love to coach and help people because we want people to get to the other side. We want to save them from an experience. Do you feel like that is why you felt like you had to go save the world when this happened initially?
Yeah, I think for sure our upbringing and our background and our childhood has a massive impact. And then I also think that when you're a survivor, sometimes you carry some guilt with the survivor, right? So
Mhm.
I feel like I'm so grateful. I sit here in a multi-million dollar house on a royal park, and I've got another multi-million dollar house on a beach, and I get to do. And I'm not saying this to brag. I'm saying to the context that because I have those things, I think, wow, like I got out of that, and I'm a
Yeah.
survivor, and I'm in a
And other
privileged.
people aren't, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's where the guilt kicks in, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So
As
interesting, isn't
long
it?
as you are taking care of yourself as well. Because I actually think that feeling like that is actually a privilege. I think it's a privilege to recognize that you've had all of these great things happen in your life and you're able to recognize that they don't necessarily happen in everybody else's life and to
Yeah.
pay your way forward.
You know what's so interesting, Shaa? You said, I have a multi-million dollar house here and I have one over here. And the very first thing you said was, I'm not saying this to brag. And yet, as women, isn't it interesting that men would never apologize for that? Men would be like, I have this and I have that. And I'm actually finishing up Jamie Kern Lima's book. And it was so funny. It was about the same thing that she never wanted to say. She was one of the richest women, self-made women in the world, and why women are conditioned to keep themselves like below the radar. But here's the beautiful thing, Shaa. When you say that, I'm like, oh my God, if she can do that, I can do that too. Like, the more we celebrate our wins and our victories and our surviving and all of it and our thriving through those situations, the more we can help other women. So it's so interesting that there's this guilt that we feel, because there's times I feel that too, but also look at what you're able to help other women see is possible in their life.
One of the things I talk a lot about is financial empowerment. And financial empowerment for me in my business is teaching business owners how to build profitable businesses that they love. But it goes one step further than that. I talk about how do you build a business that's not just making you six figures, but allowing you to take six figures home, because that's the key. It's not
A big difference. Yeah.
I'm all about teaching people how to take home six figures. And the reason I talk about that's the point at which most families in the Western world are able to start to create generational wealth. And so generational wealth means that, let me give you an example. In most Western societies and cities, the average household outgoings per month are around $5,000, £5,000, depending on where you live. Could be more, could be less, but let's take it as an average. So if you are able to take home 10,000 every month, Take home after taxes 10,000. You've got a 5,000 surplus. And this is how you create generational wealth. Now, generational wealth isn't about buying the new Ferrari. It's about what assets are we building that we can pass down to our kids. So our kids get to start just a little bit closer to the front of the line where the white middle class, well-educated male gets to start. Now, I'm not dissing the white middle class educated male. He was born into that situation. And being pro-female doesn't make me anti-male. Being pro-black doesn't make me anti-white. And I think these are really important things to recognize. But these are facts as well, right? So I want to make sure that all of us who weren't born at the front of the line get the opportunity to create generational wealth so that our kids can be born closer and their kids can be born right at the very front. And when we start to do that, what happens is that lineup at the front of the line starts to represent all of society and not just a part of society. But to create generational wealth, we have to learn not just how to make money, we have to learn how to keep money. Right. And we have to learn how to take the money that we're keeping and invest it wisely. I'm not talking about stocks and shares or crypto. You could do all of those things, but I'm talking about just the essence of understanding that you have a surplus income coming into your household. And with that surplus, you're able to generate additional assets, whether you choose to invest in stocks or shares or crypto or property or whatever.
Real estate. Yep.
You have the ability to create an asset, which in turn creates generational wealth. That is what I'm all about.
Yeah, I love that. And I talk so much about really empowering women to create money because we're not taught that. I mean, at least I'm not taught. Growing up, white middle class, we still weren't taught about how to make money. We were taught economics, right? But there's a very different thing. So Shaa, where did you start? I mean, looking at you now, obviously you're successful. You have figured it out. But where did you start? Like, what was the first thing that you did? And now looking at where you are now, what are you doing to create that generational wealth? Like, what are the things that you're doing?
So, for some context, I did an economics degree at the London School of Economics. And coming through that, it didn't teach me a single solitary thing about how to manage money. It taught me loads about micro and macro economics and international history and politics. And it was amazing. I loved my time, but it didn't teach me anything about making, managing, or keeping money. My first lesson came, and it's quite interesting, when my first long-term boyfriend at 21 bought his first apartment. And I was like, hell no way is he buying his apartment and I'm not buying my apartment. So I set myself a deadline. In 6 months, I was going to buy my first apartment. And I just went all in. I worked and saved and worked and saved. And within 6 months, I bought my first apartment. And within 18 months, I'd sold it and made $200,000. I'm very good at real estate. And I made $200,000 and I invested and I bought another property. And then I did the same thing. And I kept doing this. Like, I used to run a business and have a property sideline all the time. So I've always invested in property and I still invest.
That's amazing.
As you get older, you start to want to think about diversification. So I have, what you guys would call a 401k. I make sure I've got stocks and shares and I invest in crypto, not crazily, but more and more I've started to understand it and feel more comfortable about what I'm doing. And I've just spread my assets so that my business is an asset, my property is an asset, my 401k is an asset, my investment vehicles, stocks, that's an asset. This year, I want to actually build my own retreat space. So I'm going to, I'm going to take on debt, which is fine because it's good debt. Take on debt and I'm going to leverage the debt in terms of a mortgage to build my own retreat center. And by doing that, I'm going to have an asset that I can pass down to the next generation.
Love it. Okay, well, you and I will talk about crypto offline. I'm still so confused. I'm trying so hard to figure it out. But Shaa, I think it is important that as women, we do look at how we're diversifying our funds and our investments. And again, that's something we're not really taught. So I really appreciate that you're doing that. When it comes to growing your business, I would love to know, what are some of the key things that you've done? We talk about a team. I talk so much about team, how we can't do it on our own. I think the greatest detriment to growing a business is trying to. And, I know you talk about hiring full-time versus contractors. So I know there's someone listening right now that says, this is all great, but I still don't have the how. Like, what do I need to do to build what Shaa has built or Keri's built or whoever they're looking at? So what are some of the choices that you've made?
Definitely start hiring. Rather than hiring 3 people part-time, hire 1 person full-time. When you hire part-time people, you are one of multiple priorities. There are other 5 clients and their own business, right? So you're never going to get the attention. You want to be a team. To really scale, you've got to be a team. It's got to be a team effort pushing forwards. That's one major thing. The next thing is to recognize when you're on a dead-end road. And this might sound counterintuitive. So you could be, most people find themselves in business accidentally. And what I mean by that, you chose to set up a business, but your business model, like how you make money, is accidental. You go, so you start doing something that works, you do a little bit more of it, that works, and you carry on 2 years and you're like, hold up, what am I doing? And I think it's so important to decide on a very intentional business model. How are you going to make money? Are you going to do a group program? Are you going to be consulted? Are you going to sell a product? Are you going to sell a subscription box? Are you going to sell a membership? Are you going to sell a mix of all of those things? What is it going to look like for you? And then build your business around the right business model for you, because that's crucial.
I agree with you. And I do think that's probably one of the number one things that startup 1 to 3 year entrepreneur struggles with, because they're looking at what everyone else is doing. They're trying to match and model.
They flop from one thing to the next because oh, that person's doing that. I better go do that. No, that person's doing that. I'm going to go do that. Yeah.
Squirrel. So what would you recommend for that person? Like, they don't know what business model is right for them. And I think in the beginning, I'll speak for myself. I was doing all the things until I figured out like what really worked for me. And it's funny, 10 years in right now too, we are blowing up. We are like, this is not working, because you kind of get into it. Like, oh, let's do this and let's do this. And I'm like, cut the fat, trim it. Like, no, no, no. And so I find that so funny that, a decade later, we're in a place doing the same thing. Like, what is our model that we're going to rinse and repeat and stick with? Because it is so easy to go, oh, well, let's start this and let's do this. And what about over here? So can you give a little insight on how you would choose a business model? I know we probably don't have enough time to go deep with that, but I think that's something someone could really use right now.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I've literally just finished wrapping up a program that I launched this year called Empowered. And it's all about building out a 6-figure business model that allows you to take 6 figures home. And this is exactly what we teach inside it, because it is crucial. And you're absolutely right. There's 1 or 2 people who I think really benefit from the program. Those who fit into your category, the one you're in years, start up to 3 years, and you're trying everything, you're not sure. And then the other one is those of us who've been in business for a little while and we've hit a plateau and we're like, I don't know how to break through. I've come this far, but I haven't come this far just to come this far.
Right.
So, what I teach people is, firstly, understand what your options are, because a lot of people don't understand actually what a business model is. It's just a mechanism to make money. It's the process in which you make it. So, like I said, are you doing a membership, a subscription box, group programs, group coaching, consulting? What does it look like? So first of all, understanding what all of those things are, and then really asking yourself some key questions. Number 1, who do I really want to be? It sounds like a crazy simple question, but it's really important, because depending on how you want to show up has a massive impact on the business model that you want to run. Because if you want to have time off and you don't want to be online and you don't want to be visible that much, we're going to develop a business model that fits that. And if you're in a period in your life, if you're a season in your life where like, hey, I want to be on it. I want to be online all the time. I want to be doing TikTok. I want to be doing videos. I want my YouTube channel. I want to be on IG. I want to be everywhere. Well, then we can develop a different business model. So you have to go through a series of questions to really understand where you're at in your life. So that's the first thing. Who do you really want to be? Second, how do you want to show up? And that ties into what I said. Are you an extrovert or are you an introvert? Do you want to show up once a week? Do you want to never show up at all? Do you want to do video, or do you want to communicate all through a podcast or through emails? Like, how do you want to show up? Next one, who do you want to serve? Get really, really clear. This isn't just about finding your ideal customer avatar. This is about, who are your tribe? Who are the people that you're going to resonate with the most? So for me, I know that I resonate best, not with a target demographic from an age group or a gender group, but from a mindset. I resonate best with business owners and entrepreneurs who are fed up and frustrated because they know they can do better, but they just don't know how. And they're ready to show up and do the work. I don't work well with people who want a magic pill. I don't work well with people who think that you can pay to do a course and passive income will be coming in your bank account the next day. I don't work well with people who, don't show up. That's just not so, who do you want to serve? I want to serve people who want to do the work and who want somebody who's been there, seen it and done it, mentoring them, teaching them, and really having somebody in their corner. That's who I want to serve. And then the question is, and how do you want to serve them? So, for example, do you want to serve them by running live events? Because I love doing live events. And we're coming to a point now where hopefully we can start putting live events back on. Or do you want to serve them purely online, self-study, and you don't want to do anything live at all? Or do you want to do a hybrid of the two? There are so many variables. You have to stop, press pause, take time out, and ask yourself all of these questions because it's a fundamental piece of work. One, is going to make you happier, and two, is going to make you a hell of a lot more money.
Yes, those are such great questions. In fact, they are questions that I posted out, just recently. It is those things like, who do you want to be? What's your why? What do you love to do? When are you in your joy? And how do you want to deliver? All those questions and how you position them are so important. So no matter where you are, if you're listening, if you're watching, take a minute, write those questions down. And truly take time to answer them. Because if you're in a place in your life where you do feel stuck or you're not in joy or you're just kind of getting to the place where you're like, I'm over it, like going back to those fundamental questions are really important. And when you were talking about your new program, Empower, my understanding is that you have coaches that serve your clients. And we talk a lot about congruency, Shaa. Like if you say something, you got to do something. Talk to us more about how you set up this new program and why it's so important to you.
So I believe that if you're going to run a program called Empowered, you need to be empowered yourself. You need to walk your talk and it needs to start from within. So there's a number of things that we did differently from the outset. Typically for 6-week, 8-week online programs, everybody gets into one big group and you have the person whose program it is, they teach live, and you may have some materials, on Kajabi to back it up, and you may have some guest experts coming in, but you're all in one big group. Now, I've been in enough of these myself, and I'll put my hand up, I've run enough of these myself too. And what I know to be true is that people get lost. If somebody doesn't show up, nobody knows. I know that we say that we've got accountability sessions or implementation days, but all that really means is, hey, we've got a session at this time. If you want to show up, show up. But if you don't show up, nobody knows. And I thought I wanted to turn everything on its head and start from scratch. What is going to get my people results? And I'll tell you, it's accountability. So we set it up to have a live teach on a Monday and then a small live coaching group on a Thursday. So we had small coaching groups of 24 max in each coaching group. That meant that everybody got individual attention, and all the coaches were like teachers. They did a roll call, and if somebody wasn't in the class that night, they would get a WhatsApp message to check if they were okay and where were they. And if somebody didn't show up 2 weeks in a row, we found out, and then they got a WhatsApp message from us to check in on them and make sure they're okay. So what that meant was that no one was left behind. Mm-hmm. No one was left behind. People were given individual attention, and we took everybody on the journey with us. And for me, that was the beauty of it.
I love that, Shaa. We just actually hired a full-time accountability coach for our clients, and we're hiring new ones because just like you, I find that that's the missing piece. And no one wants to feel like they're just a part of another big group program that no one could, care less about, So I really, really love that. And so is this something that you are continuing? Is it something that people can still get involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got our next cohort launching July the 15th. So I know we're recording this a bit before that. Yeah, next. So here's the interesting thing. I set out to do a little tiny small beta group. I thought we'd have like 100 people in, and we just test it out because I wanted to see how would the coaching work. And we decided not to have a big Facebook group. Each coach had their own Facebook group. So there's real camaraderie in groups. And we just used it as a real beta group to try things out to see what worked. And then we launched. And I think there were so many things about the program that resonated with so many people. For example, I believe certainly for the UK, we have the most diverse group of coaches that I've seen in the UK. So it's one of the few areas that actually there's always more female coaches than men. I made sure that we had male coaches on our program as well. And I definitely made sure that we had absolute diversity when it came to race, when it came to gender, and when it came to age of our coaches, so that everybody had somebody that they could relate to. And I think just the whole practical messaging of learning how to not just make the money, but keep the money. The practical messaging around like unpacking a business model and being able to make an intentional choice about your model. And then the real care and attention of having small group coaching throughout the program. We over doubled the number that we anticipated. And then we had to stop 2 days early. We genuinely closed our cart 2 days early because we were at capacity with our coaches. And I didn't want to risk bringing in new coaches that I didn't know. And so the moment that the coaches I knew were at capacity, so we asked them to do double sessions and we got to that, but then we had no more capacity. So we threw a close. So the next cohort is coming in July. And I'm so excited because I've been in this space for 6 years now and we've made, multiple millions and we've done really well. And I'm really proud of everything we've done, but we have never done a program that has received such phenomenal case studies. And I don't believe that's because I'm some magic guru. I believe it's that we really learned from everything that we did right and everything we did wrong over the last 6 years. And we listened to our people about what was missing from the programs they'd done with us or the programs they'd done with other people. And we truly wanted to empower people so that they could leave the program and go off and do this all by themselves. This wasn't about learning from a guru who has all the answer, empowered by name, empowered by nature, and empowered in everything that we do. And for me, that's how you get true financial empowerment. It has to come from within. So you have to be, financially educated. You have to own all this stuff. You have to feel empowered in yourself to go off and build the business model that's going to work for you, to understand for yourself how to make money without having to rely on anyone else, to understand that whilst you're making that money, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to keep more of it? And that shifts everything. When we can start to financially empower entrepreneurs and small businesses to a far greater degree than we have now, because I think the focus has just been on, I'm a multi-6-figure business, I'm a 7-figure business owner, I'm an 8-figure. Right. How much are you taking home for you and your family? The metrics are skewed. I always talk about looking at sanity metrics, not vanity metrics. People talk about how many followers you've got. I'm like, yeah, but how many of those are really engaged and how many of those are bought from you? Let's focus on the sanity metrics. And the sanity metrics in a business is not just how profitable you are, but how much are you taking home? This is your business. Do you know how many business owners pay themselves last?
Yes. Or not at all. Yes.
And it's that whole mindset piece that I really want to shift.
Okay. So sanity or vanity? That is so great because it's really easy to get caught up in the other, right? But what are those sanity metrics? And Shaa, you have just shared so much incredible information with us today. I usually wrap up my interviews with what does inspired living mean to you? And we did that from the very beginning with what inspired living means. Tell me what's next. Like if I was to go in and hang out with you and your puppy and your son and you're talking about your plan, maybe a year from now, I don't do 5 years, but even maybe 3 years, what does the next version of inspired living in your life look like?
I'm going to be honest. Right now, the inspired living is taking the whole of August off other than delivering my empowered program. Literally, I'm going to show up on a Monday and deliver amazing content, but I'm not doing anything else in my business. Inspired living is having the opportunity to take a step back so I can think, so I can move forwards. And I feel like after the year or the 18 months that we've all had, it's hard to even see a year ahead. I need some time out before I can think forward.
Amen, sister. Love it. Take a break. And I will say that it can be so hard because we get stuck on this hamster wheel of what we've created. And you're just so inspiring with saying, I'm taking the month off. I will take a week off. But Shaa, you've inspired me. I need to take a month off. So thank you for that.
It's great for business because you get far more creative when your brain has had a chance to have a rest.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, Shaa, thank you so much for being with me today. It was so wonderful to have you on the show. And, as always, just so authentic and amazing. And I can't wait till hopefully we'll get you over to the States or vice versa, and we can finally hug it up in person.
Yes, I would love that. Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Shaa. We'll talk soon.
You've just heard another uplifting episode of Inspired Living with Keri Murphy, the podcast. I hope you loved it. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. And if you'd like to know more about Inspired Living or to get your hands on many of our awesome free resources, such as the Be Studio Ready Guide, simply visit us at inspiredliving.tv/podcast. Remember, your vision is your destiny, and we're here to help you bring it to life. Join me again next week for another extraordinary episode.